Don, another form of nameism we can find in John chapter 1, verse 12.
Yes.
Tell us about that, the way John wrote both to the Greeks and to the Hebrews.
Mm-hmm. Because he knew that Greeks would be probably the primary readers of his gospel, but also many Jews who lived in the diaspora and had learned Greek would also be reading it. He says things in a way that Greeks would understand immediately, and then he seems to pause for a moment and think, but wait, my fellow Jews are going to be reading this too, and this is going to seem kind of too forward for them to refer to God directly like that. So having said something the plain, straightforward Greek way, he repeats it in another way that is culturally sensitive to the Hebrew sensitivities.
Using the idiomatic use of the word name.
Yes, and here's an example. Yet to all who received him. Why, that's a plain statement that the Greeks
would know.
But referring to the Creator, the Messiah, with the pronoun him, directly like that, doesn't seem right to Jewish readers. So John repeats it, saying it the Jewish way, to those who believed in his name. And that satisfies the Jewish sensitivity to refer to God via his name.
And using the idiomatic use of that.
Yes. Good. So to all who received him, the Greek way, to those who believed in his name, saying it again the Hebrew way, he gave the right to become children of God. That makes it complete.
Don, we haven't even gotten to what I consider to be the most exciting passage, the most clarion passage of all that speaks about God using general revelation as a way of bringing people to himself, Psalm chapter 50. Let's dig into that one.
The 50th Psalm, right at the beginning, begins with this. The mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to the place where it sets.
Rising of the sun to the place where it sets, we assume that's all mankind.
That's drawing all of mankind. And it's not just talking about God summoning the Jews. It's referring to a gathering from all over the world. Then, verse 2, from Zion, perfect in beauty, God shines forth. Now, in verse 3, we find out why God is gathering people from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same. He's summoning people for judgment. Because verse 3 says, our God comes and will not be silent. A fire devours before him, and around him a tempest rages. He summons the heavens above and the earth that he may judge his people.
Ooh, verse 4 is very key.
So, this gathering of people from the rising of the sun to the place where it sets is for the purpose of judgment. And notice, when people are going to be judged, there have to be witnesses, right? And Paul said in Romans chapter 2, those who've sinned under the law will be judged by the law. But who does God summon as witnesses for or against people in this judgment?
Can't be the law because he's summoning people from all over the earth.
So it says he summons the heavens above and the earth that he may judge his people. So the people summoned to this judgment are going to be judged according to their insight gleaned from
general revelation.
The witness of the heavens and the earth. It's the Psalm 19 verses 1 to 4 revelation that God is going to use to either condemn them or acquit them.
Along with the Acts 14 of the rain, the crops,
yes,
the joy.
Things like that. Mm-hmm. So, according to my original exclusivist position, I would have to say, oh, well, of course, nobody's going to be saved in this judgment because it's only general revelation.
There's no specific revelation there, so they all have to be not haughtily, not arrogantly sent to hell, but in tears. They've got to be sent to hell.
They've got to be, yes. They're all going to be lost. The judgment cannot possibly bring acquittal to any of them. Well, of course, I don't remember reading this verse back in those days, but if I had, I think I would have been very surprised by what
verse
God
5
says in verse 5. Psalm 50, verse 5. After this judgment, God says, gather to me my consecrated ones who made a covenant with me by sacrifice.
Consecrated. What does the word consecrated mean?
Dedicated.
Dedicated to God.
Devoted to God.
Gather me, the ones dedicated to me.
and who became dedicated to him and made a covenant with God by their sacrifice offered to him. They made a sacrifice to God, and via that sacrifice, they were in a covenant relationship with God. This is not talking about God establishing a covenant with mankind via Abraham. This is talking about individuals establishing their own covenants with God by sacrifice throughout the world. And in this judgment, this great ingathering for judgment, God acknowledges them as his consecrated ones. They're gathered to him. The rest are not gathered to him. They're lost. And that may be a large majority, but those consecrated ones are in the mix, and
So God is saying from
puts them
all
through
the
the sieve.
peoples of the earth, and now we might say from all the different religions, all the different peoples, all the different tribal groups, God has some who have responded to general revelation, and through that, the AKA of Jesus responding to him,
Yes.
through Jesus' blood on the cross, they are considered God's consecrated ones because in their hearts, they've made a covenant to God through sacrifice.
Yes.
And this would go right along with the Rapsumbe, who made covenants and made sacrifices to the God of Cheptelah.
Cheptelah.
Okay, let's go on. We've got two other verses, many other verses actually, we've got to go through. This one really blew me away because I had a misunderstanding of it for years, but you've put new light on it. John chapter 10
and verse 16.
Verse 16.
That's right. This is where Jesus said to his disciples, I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. Now, when he says this sheep pen, what does that imply?
There must be a that sheep pen.
Yes, this contrasts with that. So he's not saying these other sheep are not in any sheep pen. He's saying they're not in this one. That allows that they could be in a different sheep pen.
Now, I've always understood this to be that Jesus was saying, I have other sheep that are not in this sheep pen of the Jews, therefore I've got to go out and get the Gentiles.
But if they're not in this sheep pen, if he says this sheep pen, that implies that there could be another one that would be called that sheep pen. So there's another sheep pen, and this is brought out by what he said next. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there will be not more than one flock and more than one shepherd, but one flock and one shepherd. So if in the future there's going to be one flock instead of more than one, and one shepherd instead of more than one because of different names, this is talking about a merging of two flocks into one flock, one sheep pen into one sheep pen.
So this sheep pen is responding to or correlating to those who through specific revelation have come into the knowledge of God and have a relationship with him.
Through the Abrahamic covenant,
Through the Abrahamic covenant.
the reading of the prophets
That pen
refers to
represent-
the people that are already consecrated ones in the Melchizedekian order of things.
in the Job order, in the Psalm 50 order, those who have made sacrifices
Yes.
in their hearts to the uncreated Creator.
People like Job and Melchizedek, people like Arapsambe, like Kusaka, my Yali friend, who rescued the little boy and made
So what
sure
Christ is saying here, it's his desire
to
that
unify.
those who have had general revelation also be elucidated into specific revelation,
Yes.
that they all could be one. That
And-
they could show that their works are from God to
Yes.
give him the glory.
There'll be those John 3:21 people who come into the light of special revelation. When they come into the light, they merge with the one sheep pen. So until that merger becomes possible through the church's faithfulness throughout the world, there will continue to be two sheep pens, but God wants them to become one. And people who speak language X will have a different name for the shepherd than people that speak language Y. But once they all merge and they recognize Jesus, the incarnate God,
He becomes the
they'll
one.
have one name for him.
And one
there'll
shepherd.
He'll be recognized, no longer be several incognito shepherds, but one shepherd will
Worship
be.
him for who he is and for his glory.
Yeah.
Let's go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. This
Yes.
one really blew me away it was an aha experience.
Mm-hmm. The author of the Epistle to the Hebrews said, without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe on Jesus Christ, crucified, buried, and risen from the dead.
No, that's not what it says. Not specific revelation, doesn't say that.
Doesn't say that. That's a deliberate misquote, not to mislead you people out there, but to jolt you into appreciating what Hebrews 11:6 actually does say.
So it doesn't say you've got to believe that Jesus is the Savior. You've got to know the name of Jesus.
I mean, it could say that, and if it said that, it would be true. But it's wider than that. Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. So was Job earnestly seeking Him?
Yes.
Not only believing that the God of heaven exists, he was earnestly seeking Him. And so he was saved. Was Melchizedek an earnest seeker of God?
Yes.
In spite of the decadence of the Canaanites all around him, he remained a faithful priest of God Most High, El Elyon.
Now that verb to seek Him, it's the same verb used in Romans 2:7. The men who are not suppressing the truth, men who are responding to it, who are seeking immortality, glory, and eternal life,
Yes.
same verb.
Same verb. So there it is. So this is acknowledging that even apart from believing on Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, someone believes that God exists, and not only that, but He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. That's an expression of faith. And the desire to seek God, who is acknowledged in all the cultures as holy, implies a desire to be right with a holy God, which means a person is turning away from the unholiness that has been in his life until he makes that new commitment. He's still a sinner. He still needs to be saved by the grace of God through the shed blood of Christ. Even though he doesn't know about Jesus, Jesus' shed blood covers his sin, and he becomes a citizen of God's kingdom. But God's intent is that we, as we are faithful, will reach that person while he's still alive in this world and illumine him with special revelation so that he, from that moment on, will be able to serve God far more effectively than he could before.
Now, as we spoke about the 95% of the cultures that have a name for the uncreated Creator, if they believe in that uncreated Creator, which they certainly do if they've got a name for Him, that qualifies for anyone who comes to us must believe that He exists. So that covers that. And if they who believe in the uncreated Creator believe that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him, that would be salvation.
Yes.
According to that passage. Now let's go to Acts chapter 17, one of your favorite verses, I believe, especially found in the book, Eternity in Their Hearts.
Yes.
How does that correlate to all of this?
As part of his Mars Hill address in the city of Athens, the Apostle Paul described God's activity in the world, all through the world, setting the stage for people to live in certain areas and move at certain times, migrate here, and then stay there for a while and migrate somewhere else. And Paul describes this manifold overruling of God in human affairs throughout the earth, and then tells us why God is doing this. Why is God moving people around to live here, live there? Is it because He's like a chess player, moving the chessmen around on the chessboard for His own entertainment? Or does He have a far grander purpose than that? I'll read this. We'll see what God's purpose is.
Acts chapter 17, starting in verse
24. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by hands. And He is not served by human hands as if He needed anything, because He Himself gives all men life and breath and everything else. From one man He made every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth. Now notice how specifically God overrules in the affairs of these people that are inhabiting the whole earth. He determined the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. God did this so that men would seek Him and perhaps reach out for Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us. So God is arranging human affairs, the interactions of nations, the results of conquests and displacements and people being driven out of one area to live in another area. God is overruling in all these events with the intent that people out there as a result of what he's doing, would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him. The inclusion of the word perhaps is another indication that it's going to be a rather rare event. If someone responds to all this sovereign overruling of God with faith and repentance, becomes one of those consecrated ones.
Hence, those who come through general revelation are a very small percent.
Tend to be, yes, I suspect, a small percentage in any community. But God wants them, and he goes to all this trouble to win their faith. It's not that he doesn't want them to hear about Jesus. Of course he wants them to know about the Savior incognito, who is the basis of their being accepted by him. But failing that, at least, he gathers them in there among his consecrated ones, as in Psalm 50.
And I've certainly heard stories of Stalin rearranging entire peoples, moving into new areas, and there in that new area finding the Lord. You saw that in Indonesia. People had been moved to Papua New Guinea, and through that they came to know the Lord.
To Papua.
So
Yes.
God moving peoples so that they could reach him.
And you know, I have quoted others, but Kenneth Pike, Dr. Kenneth Pike, a noted linguist, the key linguist, I think, for many years in Summer Institute of Linguistics, SIL. I was talking with him about these things, and he said, Don, I've experienced that in every community there's at least one man that other men know they can leave their wives and daughters with when they go away for a long journey.
Okay, unpack that one. So there's a man that has
There's
higher
at least one
moral.
man, that lives by a higher standard, and everybody knows he's trustworthy. Everybody knows, hey, I can leave my wife and daughters with him, and he won't molest them. I'll come back, everything will be fine, they'll be safe. There's at least one man.
In every culture
yes,
he's been to.
Right, and I've seen that too in village. There's at least one person. And these guys are the first to respond to the gospel. They somehow sense that you are akin to them and they're akin to you. They become those men of peace that become the opening up, the beginning of the opening up of a culture. They're the means whereby the firewall gets penetrated.
So these are the men who have responded to general revelation. They don't know it.
There's no other way to explain them, Bob. There's no other way to explain the fact that they're there. So isn't it great to know that God has shown mercy everywhere he can? Mm-hmm. And that we could get there to find these ones that are already redeemed by him.
The starting blocks.
Yes, that we might be able to enable them while they're still in this world to know what we know and rejoice in all the truth of Scripture, all the doctrines that bless us. And
let's press on to other Scripture, Don. John, when he wrote in 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, he spoke very openly without qualifiers.
Yes. Now we're referring here to the author of John chapter 3, verse 21, the author of John 1:9, who has let us know in his earlier writing, his gospel, that he's aware of general revelation and of people living by the truth of that prior light, even before they come into the light of the gospel. And this same author talks about everyone who people who love one another are born of God. And he doesn't put in qualifiers to say only if they love God because they know about him through us. We quote, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God." Everyone who loves has
Not
been
everyone
born.
who loves because they read the Hebrew Scriptures.
Yeah,
Just everyone.
There's no limiting
No qualifiers there.
Qualifier in there. And he goes on to say, not only has everyone who loves been born of God, but everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love.
That's a complete open door. Anyone who loves. So the man in Papua, in the tribals, who loves, who can be trusted. Men bring their wives and daughters to him because they know he is a man of peace. He's a high moral standards. He's a man of love. That man knows God.
But if anyone say, oh, no, John was only talking about Christians, then you can go back to John 3:21 and say, no, wait a minute, look, he's acknowledged people who were already
live in the
living by the
truth.
truth before they came into the light
1
of the
John
Christian life.
4:16.
And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God is in him. So,
Wide open blank statement. 3
Wide-
John 11, 3 John 11.
dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. Now, that is not to say that there couldn't be a deceiver who will put on a charade of doing good in order to gain access and credibility when actually he intends evil. So there is still, other scriptures warn to be discerning. But if someone is really good, if it's not a deception, if it's not a false teacher, trying to ingratiate people by being kind, just like, this finance man was taking people's money and giving them a good return.
And
So
then
it seemed like he was doing good.
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
But not at all. It
So
was
words
really-
like all, everyone
Everyone.
are used several times without qualifiers. He certainly thought there's going to be some Gentiles who
Would
are going to
read
be
that.
reading these letters, and I'm going to open it up to everybody
Yes.
because the light is shown to all men.